Greetings, viewer. Welcome. So you have a door that you want to adjust. You just don't like the way it looks on the strike side. Maybe you can even fix the reveal on the head a little bit. Well, you're in luck. The YouTube search algorithm has worked in your favor. Stay tuned. Here on this door, we have a problem with the reveal on the strike side. It's just a little too close, and the door can hit once it starts expanding and contracting from the AC and the heat. We need to make it a little bit wider. To go about doing this, we will need to shim behind the hinges. To accomplish this task, we're going to first have to make some 1/4 inch strips, and we're going to use the empty hinge box that the hinges came in. They make great shims to shim the doors with. It's very condensed material, it's not corrugated. We're going to rip about 6 pieces, 1/4 inch wide, and yeah, we'll start with, that'll give us 2 per each hinge, and we'll see how it goes from there. Okay? So we got our 6 strips made here. Remember, on this example, we're trying to move the door far away from the door strike. When I have that strip of paper in the hinge pocket closest to the door stop. If we had needed to move the door into the frame, we would insert the shims on the outside of the frame. For this example, we need to be on the inside of the door stop. Let's pause it here for a second and let me give a detailed explanation of what I just mentioned. This is the hinge side door stop. You also have the head stop and the latch stop. The latch stop is what holds the door in a closed position. The head stop and the hinge stop is there just to stop you from seeing through the gap between the door and the frame. It doesn't necessarily touch the door, or the door would bind when you close the door. Placing the shim behind the hinge at this point will move the door away from the latch side. It will cause the gap between the door and the door jamb to get wider, but don't over shim this point or it'll cause the door to bind. You'll know that happens when you're trying to close the door and it has a springy feeling to it. The hinges are hitting each other and you need to take a shim out. Placing the shim behind the hinge at this point will move the door towards the latch side. It'll make the gap between the door and the door frame smaller. You can over shim this without worrying about hinge binding, but don't go so much as to where the edge of the door is now past the face of your doorstop. Your frame is really wrong if you need to shim that much. Anyways, you should fix the frame at this point instead of shimming that much. That should clarify things a little better. Let's resume the video. We'll start with 1 strip for now. We don't need to move it a lot. So we're going to insert the screws back in. Now we're attaching the hinge, but we're going to use the 2 outer holes where the paper is not applied so we can have the tilt on that hinge. Later on we can fill in the other 2 screws. That'll be the 2 screws where the paper are. Now that we have that first hinge shim, let's check the reveal and see what we've done. See if the 1 paper is enough. It looks okay, but we still need to move the top of the door over now away from the door jamb. We're going to repeat the same procedure at the top hinge. Just let me mention that when you're installing the door, only use 2 screws to begin with. Put 1 in the front, 1 in the back, alternate the distance and the spacing and the orientation. That way, if we need to adjust the door, you only have 2 screws to take out, not 4. You're already 6 screws ahead if you need to adjust this door. We're going to now shim the top now. Like I said, we need to move it away from the door jamb on the strike side. We need to have a bigger reveal there. I'll just do 1 paper also. That should be enough for what we're doing. Seems to be working good so far. Once again, I'll also install just the 2 screws in the front of the hinge. The 2 holes that doesn't have the paper behind it. Remember, this is shimmed at the hinge pocket closest to the door stop. We need to move the door away from the strike side. The hinge will sit proud a little bit of the frame. You don't want to go more than 3 paper. It'll hinge bound and it'll start to bind against the other hinge. Let's install the rest of the hinge screws. I'm going to use my nail set to poke a hole in that paper that we use as a hinge shim. I don't want to have to fight it with the hinge screws. It can strip, it can break, and I don't want to have to mess in with a broken screw. I'll have to drill it out, tap it out. That's a whole nother video. Remember to use the machine screws that you send. This is a metal frame, and we're going to have to use the machine screws. Don't cheat out and use the wood screws. It's not right. The wood screws is for the wood door. The machine screws are for the metal door or the metal frame. This is a simple adjustment. One of the easier ones that you can come across. It's one of the better versions of a door adjustment that you need to do actually. Now you've just finished adjusting your first door. Congratulations. Here's some things you might come across. If you strip the screws, replace it. they look very bad. It's representative of poor quality. You should have surplus screws there. They send enough screws in those things, metal and wood. You replace the screws. You have a box of screws sitting around by now. When you first install the door, only use 2 screws to start with. One in the front, one in the back, alternate the distance. That will set the hinge flat. And if you need to adjust the door, you only have 2 screws to take out, not 4. Less screws to strip. Shimming the door in the hinge pocket closest to the top draws the door away from the strike. Shimming the door in the hinge pocket closest to the edge of the frame pushes the door towards the strike. If you're installing a door in a metal frame that's been filled with concrete and precaution wasn't taken to protect that hinge pocket from getting clogged up, you're going to have to drill out the hinge screws hole with a masonry bit. Usually you can only go in about 5/16 or so before you bottom out behind the hinge plate. And then you need to top it out to clean it out. However, I suggest you take your tap. It's going to be a 1224 tap for those machine screws. Cut the tip off with a grinder. If you look at the tip, you'll see it's tapered and you have a good 1/4 inch of tip before the thread even starts. So cut that whole area off and then chamfer the ends to give you like a low starter tip on there. You want to have all threads going into the hinge holes. Once you start topping it, you only have about 5/16 of depth. If you're installing an exterior door, it'll take stainless steel hinge and stainless steel screws. And it's usually less trouble fighting with those stainless steel screws because the magnet doesn't hold it. You can take a regular hinge screw now from an interior door. You'll have extras of those. Use that to first get the door in place. And once the doors hang, you can then replace it with the stainless steel screws. That way you're not dropping the stainless steel screw on the dirt. Your buddy's there hanging that, holding that door for you, struggling with the door, and you're fumbling in the ground looking for a hinge screw. Use an interior hinge screw to first install the door, and then you can change it out to the stainless steel screws. And if it's an NRP hinge, don't forget to turn that little security screw in. Otherwise, the whole NRP is null and void. Thank you for your time.